Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, your Uncle Herbie, for another edition of Wisdom After the Fall. I'm thinking this might be the first of a series, which I call Baby Boomers Done Apologizing. You know, we get the shit kicked out of us baby boomers. I know that my audience, from what limited demographic info I get so far in this early stage of the channel, that most of the people watching me are roughly my age down to about 45. So I'm just going to kind of, don't you get a little sick of these stupid Gen Z and whatever the Gen X are my children and millennials. They're only semi-dumb, but they kind of got dumber as it went, and I understand that we were too permissive, and I understand we let them get away with murder, and I understand that we might be, as a generation, it's to some extent responsible for their idiocy, and certainly we took part in a lot of this stupidity as we tossed away every moral value we knew was right. But as age came by, we realized, like, whoa, we've let that horse out of the barn a little too much, and time to bring him back to the corral. That's a fractured metaphor. But anyway, I do ride, by the way. I just don't take care of the horses, and I know I just fractured that up. Anyway, today we're going to talk about things the Gen Z thinks they're so, the environmental smugness. We're going to talk a little bit about environmental smugness and just things that they do that we shouldn't ever bow our heads and think that we have to do too, because it's so dumb. Gen Z, and I think there's the new one is Gen Alpha, and I guess we're starting over. Did we already go through Gen Yankee and Gen Fox? I don't know. I mean, seems like we're skipping letters. Where do we go from Z to A? I don't know. But anyway, I think they're more into posing than knowing what the fuck they're talking about. Don't you think sometimes? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. And I'm a little cranky today. I'm doing a little cranky boomer thing. But, come on. We're done enough apologizing. Enough apologizing, especially if they're still living at home with you. Anyway, just saying. I got to tell you, you moms out there still cleaning their underwear, by me. I don't understand it. I'd throw them out right on their butts. But, what can I say? All four of my kids are self-supporting. Okay, number one. Stop recycling. For Christ's sake, nothing's getting recycled. The recycling is the biggest scam. And, it's like, this comes to mind today because as I walk Pepper along the lake where I live, which you can see over my shoulder, down the ways a bit between the buildings, there are recycling bins. And you see people out there and they're like, going through a whole process of what should I throw in here and what should I throw in there, and they get all vociferous about it. Almost no plastic can be recycled. That's number one. Almost none. So all that plastic you're throwing in the recycling bin, Gen Z, is, and fact check me on this, dudes, it's going to China. Here's what happens. They throw it in the recycling bin. It goes to the recycling company. The recycling company can't justify recycling it because the cost of recycling it is just insane. You really can't. Used plastic is, you might as well wipe your tuchus with it. So what do? They bind it up, and since they're a recycling company and not the local waste management company, they send it to China by way of ship, and then it ends up in China, who's supposed to put it in sanitary landfills, but hey, they have slave labor. They're not going to really do what they say. What a shocker. So what they do is dump it in the Pacific Ocean. And that's what good your recycling's doing. And I'm not saying a little bit of it, I'm saying all of it. That plastic, the sea of plastic that doesn't exist, by the way, but the plastic that's in the ocean, that's another myth, but we're not going to get into that today. But the plastic, there is a lot of plastic in the ocean. I mean, I'm just saying there's not a Sargasso sea of plastic out there. This is a mythical creation of environmentalists, but that's another story for another day. We created them too. All those cute girls that lost their bras that we got attracted to, Gen X. Look at me, I'm senile. Boomer guys, we should have thought again. My mustache is itching. Sorry about that. Anyway, recycling is, and landfills are great. It's not like we're running out of room. I realize that, New York City put pictures of barges on TV, and I'm sure they will again as they ship them down, but landfills get turned into nice places to live. Here in Phoenix, where I live, the landfills are always in Shittsville, and it's not like we're running out of Shittsville. There's parts of every city in America, and near every town in America that nobody's going to live, and that's where they put the landfill. And then when they're done, the photograph that I just showed on the right of the playground was really on a recycled landfill, and they put them in areas where the poor kids are because they don't have nice playgrounds, and now they do, and everybody lives happily ever after. And most of the United States is empty. I hate to tell you this, guys. This is a big we're not. We know how to build sanitary landfills. We know how to make them so they don't leak into the water table. We know how to recycle over the top of them. We know how to replant them. We know how to turn them into housing developments in some places. There's nothing bad about a landfill. This is all cuckoo. Okay, so stop recycling. But if you're going, this brings me to number 2. The cotton bags. Okay, so I shop at the Arizona State University Trader Joe's often. And there's a lot of things about Trader Joe's that I genuinely love. And they have so many good products, especially if you're single, like little frozen things, like, their Asian frozen dumplings and things are just out of this world. I don't know if you're into that sort of thing. And their hummus is excellent. And, their breads and their everything in Trader Joe's, is excellent. I'm also told their alcohol is excellent. I don't drink, but I'm sure that, everyone says that it's just the best there is and the price is right. And when I rarely drink, I drink, like if I have people over, I'll get a bottle of, I think it's $4 Chuck, Charles Shaw, Trader Joe's, and it tastes as good as any other wine to me. Not that I'm an enophile, by any stretch of the imagination. Hold on, I got to sip my Coke Zero, which is about the only vintage I get is, what is it, this week's Coke Zero? Anyway, here's a little inconvenient fact. And Trader Joe's, by the way, falls for the joke of giving everyone those shitty paper bags with the glued on handles that you'd have to double up. Now, you got to think about how much energy goes into, they got to chop down the tree and they got to process the tree and it's got to turn into a bag. And even though these bags are recycled paper, some tree died at some point for that, and the energy it takes to recycle the paper and reproduce the bag, and it's a shitty bag. And here's the thing. That's all to avoid using plastic bags, which, as it turns out, are the most environmentally friendly thing of all, because they're extremely, when they get, after they're used, you can compress them down to nothing. They go into the landfill and there they sit forever and ever, saying, well, they're never going to break down. What, are you going to dig them up? I mean, at some point they might have archaeological value to some future, anthropologist or something. But so what? So what? I mean, look, I don't understand that argument. Here's the truth. It takes 7,100 plastic bag uses, okay, to equal the so-called energy savings of using one cotton shopping bag. They got to grow the cotton, they got to water the cotton, they got to pick the cotton, they got to process the cotton, they got to transport the cotton, they got to manufacture the bag, they got to transport it to Trader Joe's, and all that energy and all those fossil fuels and all that water and all that time is going in to save nothing. 7,100. Fact check me. It's real for sure. And now, let's just say there are a few things you can recycle, like paper bags. Okay. Yes, if you're really bent, if this is your thing, never mind. By the way, don't want to confuse you that there are more forests today than there were at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. Never mind that the trees are all replanted, because the lumber companies completely understand that they're harvesting a resource that they need to renew for their own business model to survive. You can't just take all the wood in the world without growing new wood. And companies like Weyerhaeuser have huge operations. We have much more forest now than we did at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. Not to the 20th to the 21st, not 26 years ago. I'm talking 126 years ago. This is a myth, okay? But let's say you buy into the myth and you just want to recycle it because it makes you feel better, and you prefer that the owls mate in old growth forests than new growth forests, as if the owl gave a shit. Let's just pretend that you absolutely feel that way. Okie doke. Fine, stop throwing garbage into the recycling bins. So, because you're costing your city and your taxpayers enormous amounts of money. Plus, again, we're dealing with energy and fuels to separate all this stuff up and send it to China. Once the pizza box is greasy, guys, not recyclable. Okay, it's full of cooking oils. And they're not going to extract the cooking oils from the greasy pizza box. Throw it in the garbage. Okay, that's a good example. Used paper coffee cups. They might have been made from recycled paper, but once you got all that coffee and cream and sugar and gunk and all that stuff in there, unrecyclable. Throw it in the trash can. Stop. And when in doubt, throw it in the garbage. If you're not positive that it's recyclable, by all means, throw it in the garbage. And that means virtually all plastics. Don't try to figure out the like 2% of plastics that they can recycle. You don't have the time in your life for that. Leave that to Gen Z to spend their time posing and looking miserable. For the rest of us who are normal, like stop falling for the joke. The line has to be drawn. You know, they're out there fighting politics. Let them go out there and fight. Just in your life, day to day, act in common sense. And when the Gen Z kid looks at you with disdain, tell them to go fuck themselves. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. It's kind of a fun little video. 10 minutes. That's all it takes. Please like, subscribe, share, all that other kind of good stuff, because it's a baby little channel and I'd like to get monetized. But other than that, I love you guys and have a beautiful day. And until next time, this is Uncle Herby saying peace out.